Early life and conversion. The man known today throughout the world as John Calvin, who is generally credited as the founder of the system of Protestantism named after him, was born July 10th, 1509, in Noyon, France, as Jean Chauvin. His was a devoutly religious Roman Catholic family of prominence in an ecclesiastical town dominated by the local bishop and his assisting priests. As secretary and legal adviser to the bishop, Jean's father, Gerald, was an inside participant in a corrupt, religion-based political system. In a bit of old-fashioned and quite common nepotism, young Jean was put on the church payroll at the age of 12, remaining on it for 13 years, until 1 year after his apparent conversion to Luther's Protestantism. From his earliest years, Jean was the beneficiary of an ungodly partnership between the civil and religious authorities, who held the common people in bondage, a partnership dominated by the Church. It was a pattern that he would later implement as a Protestant, with even greater efficiency in Geneva, Switzerland, including church dominance in civil affairs and persecution and even execution of those accused of heresy. Upon entering the Collège de la Marche at the University of Paris, Jean's love of Latin was reflected in his registration as Johannes Calvinus. There he diligently spent excessively long hours in compulsive study that had ill effects upon his health in later years and possibly shortened his life. He was known for his deep Catholic piety and blunt rebukes of his friends' morals. Quite unexpectedly, in 1528, Jean's father, Gerald, was excommunicated from the Roman Catholic Church. Shortly thereafter, Calvin's brother, a priest, was also excommunicated for heresy. As a result, Gerald ordered Johannes, who was studying for the priesthood, to Orléans for the study of law. Calvin later explained, "My father had intended me for theology from my childhood, but since the law proved everywhere very lucrative for its practitioners, the prospect suddenly made him change his mind." This new pursuit became the young man's passion, and possibly laid some of the foundation for the legalism that was later to become so pervasive in the system of theology that he would thereafter develop. After earning a Bachelor of Laws in 1531, he would later be granted a doctorate in law. Jean, now Johannes, John, returned to Paris. He immersed himself in a passionate study of classical literature and published his first piece of writing, a Latin essay on Seneca's De Clementia. Historian Will Durant says that John, still a devout Roman Catholic, seemed dedicated to humanism when some sermons of Luther reached him and stirred him with their audacity. Secret discussions of daring dissension soon swept Calvin into a circle of young humanist intellectuals who were urging reform of the Church along the lines of Luther's bold rebellion against the Pope. By January 1534, though not yet a full-fledged Protestant, Calvin had become vocal enough in support of Luther's ideas that he was forced to flee Paris. Finding refuge in the town of Angoulême, he began to write his voluminous classic, Institutes of the Christian Religion, and quite remarkably finished the first and smaller edition the following year. Bertner acknowledges, "The first Latin edition contained in brief outline all the essential elements of his system, and, considering the youthfulness of the author, was a marvel of intellectual precocity. It was later enlarged to 5 times the size of the original, and published in French, but never did he make any radical departure from any of the doctrines set forth in the first edition." Today's Calvinists avoid the uncomfortable fact that in all of his voluminous writings, Calvin never tells of being born again through faith in Christ. He considered himself to have been a Christian from the moment of his Roman Catholic infant baptism. At whatever time we are baptized, We are washed and purified once for the whole of life. We must recall our baptism, so as to feel certain and secure of the remission of sins. It wipes and washes away all our defilements. He trusted in that baptism as proof that he was one of the elect, and denounced all who, like today's evangelical ex-Catholics, were baptized after believing the gospel. Those saved out of Catholicism and baptized as believers were known as Anabaptists, and were persecuted by Catholics, Lutherans, and Calvinists. Of such, near the time of his conversion to Luther's Protestantism, Calvin wrote, "One should not be content with simply killing such people, but should burn them cruelly." Calvin banished them from Geneva in 1537. How could today's born-again and baptized former Catholics consider Calvin as one of them? They couldn't, and wouldn't.